A Tiger in the Zoo, written by Leslie Norris. About the poem. In this poem, the poem highlights the agony and helplessness of a caged tiger that lives in a zoo and explains what his life could be if he had been a free animal. The poet conveys that the tiger should be hiding himself behind the long grass to catch its prey and terrorize the villagers around the forest. Ironically, the tiger in the zoo is powerless and feels helpless in front of the visitors. Alone, he hears the voice of the patrolling cars and stares at the stars. The poet emphasizes the cage life of a tiger is a stark contrast to that of free tiger that lives the way God has created him. In the first few lines, we will go through the first few lines. He stalks his vivid stripes, the few steps his cage on pads of velvet quiet. In his quiet rage, he should be lurking in shadow, sliding through long grass near the water hole where plum deer pass. He should be snarling around houses at the jungle's edge. We will quickly find out some of the word meanings. Stalks means walk, vivid, bright, pads, soft paws, lurking, hiding, and then plum, basically talking about healthy or fat, snarling, making sound. The next few lines of the poem. Baring his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village, but he's locked in a concrete cell, his strength behind bars, stalking the length of his cage. Ignoring visitors, he hears the last voice at night, the patrolling cars, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. Fangs, front long teeth, cell, small room, patrolling cars. You are aware of this. Stares, it means looking to something. Patrolling cars is basically the cars that moves around in the jungle at night. Explanation. The poet Leslie Norris describes the tiger that walks in a cage cell of the zoo. There are bright and beautiful stripes over his body. As he walks quietly with his soft paws or feet, soft like velvet, he is very angry and furious. But he tries to control his anger as he is helpless. Here, the poet wants to criticize man's tendency to show his power because the tiger is unable to express his anger and grief as his strength is checked behind the bars by man. So basically these 4 lines talks about this. Now the poetic devices that is being used. He stalks in his vivid stripes, alliteration, usage of S. Assonance, as you can see, it is marked in red, the eyes. On pads of velvet quiet, metaphor. Metaphor basically means same quality in an imaginative way. In his quiet rays is oxymoron. Oxymoron, phrase that combine 2 words that seem to be opposite. Explanation of the next stanza. Here the poet wants to tell the readers that the tiger is given the right to freedom by God and he should be roaming in the jungle freely. He should be free to live quietly in shade and hide in long grass near a pool where a healthy deer may come to drink water. In fact, the poet wants to say that the tiger is born to live freely in the jungle where he could catch his prey and eat it, but the tiger in the cage is unable to do so. Poetic devices that is been used, again usage of alliteration. By now you all are aware of alliteration. Next, where plum deer pass, here also usage of alliteration is been marked with red. Near the water hole, consonants over here, usage of R at the end of near and water. Explanation of the next few lines. Here it is highlighted that the tiger, being wild animal, should terrorize the people living at the outskirts of the jungle. With his fearsome snarl, that is the sound, he ought to terrorize the villagers, showing his big white teeth and deadly claws, and not be terrorized by the people, which is quite ironical and unfortunate for the wild animal like tiger. But this tiger is locked in a small cage of a zoo. The poet felt sad to think that an animal like tiger is stripped of his strength and put behind bars by man, and thus his power and strength is abused and mocked at. Poetic devices used in these lines. He should be snarling. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is what? It's basically the word sounds, how it sounds, it spells also like this. For example, hiss. The snakes, they hiss. So how do we write hiss? Hiss. So however it sounds, it is written in that way. Next, usage of consonants and ascendaton. White fangs and his claws, where you see and is not used, no usage of conjunction in this. Then assonance, alliteration, you are aware of. Imaginary, here the red marked words are basically imaginary. Explanation of the last few lines of the poem. The tiger is walking in the cage from one end to the other. He looks out of the cage where many visitors have come to see him and try to trouble him for their amusement. It makes him angry and furious, but he tries to ignore them as he is helpless. To divert his attention, he keeps walking. At night, he hears the sound of the patrolling cars, which guard and take round in the zoo for upkeep of its safety. He helplessly and sadly looks at the shining stars with his shining eyes, which are hopeful of living freely in jungle. The poet wants to sensitize us to protect animals and respect their rights to freedom. Poetic devices that is being used. Stares with his brilliant eyes. Assonance, I is being repeatedly used. Consonants, stares with his brilliant eyes. Again, consonants, see, usage of and is not there, whereas and could have been put in this sentence. Alliteration, you are aware of alliteration, usage of H in these. Patrolling cars, brilliant stars, again imaginary or imagery, where imaginatively words are being used.